Oh, started about 25 years ago in a little studio in South London. Lived on a mattress in the loft, went swimming every day for a wash. Went from there to another studio where I worked with Squeeze and Julian Cope, and then that closed down, and then basically went freelance, and I became Pat Collier's engineer at a place called Greenhouse, and he was one of the sort of indie kings. So, and he worked with sort of Kingmaker, Wonder Stuff and all those bands. So I was Pat's engineer and then doing all the other bands, B-sides and stuff when he wasn't doing albums. And then years pass and eventually you get your wings as a producer. And so then I ended up working with lots of bands from big sort of Britpoppy times with sort of Placebo, Elastica, Idlewild, Stereolab, Cable, Transglobal Underground, just lots of, bands.
In those days,
Yep.
when you first got going, things were very different. Everything was tape, nothing was digital. In terms of producing records, is it easier now or is it a more difficult?
It's probably a little bit easier because you're not limited to 24 tracks. So there is that. The way that we make a record now is completely different because before you would do your drums and you would build on the one drum track in one place on the tape, whereas now you can do lots of drum takes and splice things and stuff. So it's a completely different way of working. And when you do vocals, instead of having two tracks left when you've done all the other instruments and you've got to sort of do a good vocal and then drop in on it, now you can just do lots of tracks and comp it again. So it is a completely different way of working, but standards have fallen because we used to have to line up the tape machine every morning and get it to 0 dBs and the technical side of it, use compressors and stuff like that. Now there's a load of jokers who've done recording courses, haven't got a clue what a compressor does and why it's necessary. And some of the states of files that I get to say mix something that someone's recorded at home is hilarious, really.
Do you think that technology has basically made it so that any Tom, Dick and Harry with GarageBand on his laptop thinks he can make a decent record?
Yeah, I think yes, and I think some people do and some people don't. I mean, you can do it, but I mean it can be just as dangerous using all that. I mean, because I've had stuff come in and someone's going, I've done a mix of this, and you can see they've got loads of plugins turned on in it. And then you go into it and they're just using the presets and the compressor's not even compressing or they're not using the EQ so it can be dangerous as much as anything else. I mean, yeah, the technology is there to be able to do it, but it's the knowledge. And I've done the knowledge.
Do you think the way the industry has changed in terms of major labels struggling budget-wise, etc., download has kicked the arse of physical product? Has that made it harder for you to get work? Absolutely, because there's less money around and the knock-on effect is less bands get signed. So less bands get signed, i.e. less work. I mean, 10 years ago I would have an agent stroke manager and you'd get paid more money per track to do a whole album, say, and there was, you could lose 20% or 15% to your manager, you still earn a good living. Nowadays, there's so few bands being signed and records being made with those budgets that it's very hard to earn a living. So, it's absolutely been affected. Have you had to sort of change your game in that respect? I've had to start sewing up the holes on my jeans. How I get work, it changes. I have to reinvent how I get work all the time because, first of all it was the management, and then that went and you get other bits, and then MySpace was good, and bands could come direct to you and they go, God, we can actually talk straight to you without going through your manager, and MySpace was brilliant, and then that died a death, and so now it's sort of reinvented and. You try advertising. I advertised in the NME last year for 13 weeks in the studio guide, mentioning my name and Idlewild, Elastica, Placebo, the same blah, 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 for 13 weeks, and I didn't get one single phone call. You think
or
that's-
email.
Is that because people think, well, I don't need a producer, I can make a really good sounding record?
I think it's because people probably aren't reading the NME classifieds if they want a studio, really. I'm having more success getting work from sort of getting directly in touch with bands on the internet, which is basically what my management probably used to do. I don't know, but you know, I think adverts have got to be internet adverts, and again, I don't know how hit or miss it would be. It's tough. It's tough.
Do you get a wide variety of work? Do you still get stuff from labels?
No, I don't know how many. There are small labels still, and the majors, but I don't get a lot of label work anymore. It's more people self-financing.
Is it better for you to have your own studio then, in that respect?
I think if I didn't have the studio, I wouldn't be working at all.
And is it kind of a steady thing, or is it up and down, or?
It's steady. Each year is round about the same, and the dead months vary each year. So yeah, it's not like December's rubbish and September's brilliant. It changes every year, but the last 4 or 5 years have been pretty on the same level.
Do you spend most of your time now then, when you're not recording somebody, chasing new work?
I'm beginning to do it a bit. I've made a conscious effort to try and do it this year, to try and bump it up a bit. But it's hard. It is hard. But yeah, I do have to do this. Yeah.
I think it's quite hard because a lot of younger bands and interesting bands don't get played on radio at certain things because they've got a certain criteria they have to have.